After mastering the home and apartment rental sector with a long stint at Airbnb, he's now taking his expertise to the world's largest lodging site. Please welcome Booking.com's recently appointed Vice President, Home Division, Olivier Grémillon. Welcome back.
Thank you, Douglas.
Under different circumstances.
Yeah, I have the same jacket as last year, I guess, but
okay.
A few other things have changed.
Okay. So I guess I have lots of questions about all sorts of things, but I suppose I should start with the question that your successor has asked me to ask you. So with the exception of agreeing to be interviewed by me over the last 5 years, what is the biggest mistake that you have made in your career in private accommodation?
Yeah, I was trying to find a joke or something like I should have not hired Jeroen to begin with or something, but I'm not the one who hired him, so it didn't go that well. No, I think, over the time, we did a lot of mistakes, right? Like we started at Airbnb more than 6 years ago, and there are a lot of things that we discover along the way. But I guess, overall, I'm pretty proud about what we achieved and what the team is still achieving, what each of them is becoming. A lot of them are still at Airbnb, a lot of them have moved on. And, I'm pretty proud of what we built together. So not that many mistakes to report on. Like a lot of them, but not a big one that would say, yes, on that side.
No example, nothing specific, huh?
Yeah, again, we did a lot of mistakes, like hiring mistakes, managing changes, taking some strategic move on one side or the other, spending too much time with regulators or too little. There are a lot of things that we could have done differently. I think the good thing is we learn, we try to learn from these mistakes and not do them too many times. So.
Okay. So you are responsible for the homes division, and we'll talk a bit about what that is. But before we do that, I realize you're not involved in other sectors too deeply within Booking.com. But I just want to touch on kind of briefly, just from a larger kind of Booking.com perspective, just because it's obviously the site is so big, it's had such an impact on our industry over the past decade or more. And there's been kind of recent indications from the leadership about kind of the future kind of vision for the site. Where does the next 100 billion in market capitalization come from? So talking about becoming a full-service agency, and we see more and more experimentation with flights, with other types of transportation, with experiences in destination. Can you give us a little bit of what's the big vision?
Yeah, so I think the Booking started as an hotel accommodation website and then expanded into becoming a little bit more by providing more than just hotels, but other types of accommodation. And we now have 30 different property types on the platform, and we can come back to that, obviously. And then now what we want to do is actually go from just being an accommodation website to being, working in the entire customer journey. So from flights, and we've done some experiments, rides from the airport, obviously accommodation, that's what we started with, experiences, attractions, in-stay services, giving you a recommendation for restaurants. So the entire spectrum of what people can do when they actually do travel. Some of them are obviously much more advanced than others. In some cases, we leverage some of the other companies of a group. The Booking Holdings Group. In some cases, we do it on our own, or we can do different partnerships. But the vision is really to have an end-to-end, offering for the traveler, so that they can find everything they want on Booking.
Is this like a 6-month vision, a 2-year vision? Is it?
It's a very long-term vision, because obviously, you can start a lot of different things, but before the service is optimal, maybe it's never going to happen. We always iterate. Even on the accommodation side, we still do 1,000 experiments a day, so it's never ending. But also, you need to get scale, and we are not there for most of these other services. So it's a long-term vision, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about homes. I think actually, when I saw the announcement that you had moved to Booking.com, that was actually the first time I'd actually seen the term homes division. Is that a newly created division, or is it just a new name? What does it mean within Booking.com?
Yeah, it's pretty new. It's an internal name, right? Like it's just because we created a business unit internally just to work on focus our efforts around what we do in homes, apartments, and other unique places to stay, as we call it. So obviously this existed for quite some time. The offering of this type of accommodation has existed for quite some time, but we created the business unit when I arrived. So
can you give us a sense, like how big is it? Where does it fit into the? And how do you do you have to fight for, I don't know, airtime, internal visibility with that other kind of side business in hotels that Booking does?
So it fits, in the building on the second floor for most of it, another piece on the fourth floor. But
that's not quite what I was.
I know. So no, it's quite big. If you look at the numbers, we have 28 million reported listings on the platform, all types of accommodation. 5 million of them are actually homes and apartments. So it's a pretty big chunk of what we do already, and it's been pretty clear that we want to become the one-stop shop of accommodation in our way to become the one-stop shop for travel. So, there is a sequence of things happening, and obviously what we do in the home division is actually a pretty significant priority for the company. So yeah, I get, and my team gets quite a bit of attention, quite a bit of support, and quite a bit of resources also to achieve what we are planning to achieve.
Okay, so let me just ask you about the 5 million number. It seemed, so it was got a lot of attention. It seems a little bit like you've got two kids on the playground who were kind of fighting to be at the top of the jungle gym, or whatever. No, I've got 4 million. No, I've got 5 million. What does that number really mean? Airbnb has always said, I think, half or more of the listings are actually only available for 30 nights a year. So to me, it seems more like misdirection than really giving us a sense of how big how much inventory there really is that's bookable at any one time.
Yeah, so that's exactly what, and to be honest, I didn't start this. Like when I arrived, the press release was already written. I said, whoa, wait a second, because I didn't know that the business was actually that big when I joined. Because all the numbers reported something smaller, and I didn't know this number was that big, and that home was already that big in the company. So I wanted to make sure that I checked the numbers a little bit to make sure that questions like this I could answer, looking at you in the eyes and saying, yes, I'm comfortable with the numbers.
I am still expecting an answer.
Yes, I will. But no, so the types of accommodation we have is basically we split it in two. Everything that is a hotel, motel, resort, love hotel, whatever, there are 11 types of hotel that we have on the platform, represent 23 million potential rooms. And on the other side, you have 5 million of homes, apartments, igloo, tree houses, bed and breakfast and stuff like that. So that's the way we split it. It's actually quite similar to what the others are doing, and we are counting them in a similar way as well, which is how many of these properties are bookable, how many units are actually bookable. The type of inventory might be slightly different from one player to another, so we have more professionally managed listings than the competition on average. So our listings tend to get booked more on average, and some others, people might actually put them only for a few days, so they get less booking. But the type of listings that are on the platform actually similar to what we see in other platforms. And that was the goal, to create some transparency of what we have in that space, which people didn't realize before we put this number out.
Can you share any data on kind of the split within that? So let's say, professionally managed or kind of multi-unit complexes versus individually owned, more, I would say, Airbnb style types of accommodations, or kind of urban versus, leisure or traditional vacation rental destinations?
I should be able to do that if I remembered all the numbers, but next year I will have a better answer for you. But a majority is more on the professionally managed side. The fastest growing is actually on the more casual host and a single property owner, as we call them, like you and me, putting our apartments on Booking. It's actually quite mixed between cities and vacations. We are vacation areas. I think we are more city-driven than home-away, but we are more vacation than Airbnb, if it tells you a little bit. So that's a little bit how I look at it. I don't have specific numbers on how it's being split and whatever, but a big part that we see is the single property owners is growing very fast, and we've made a lot of changes on the product side to accommodate that. We started obviously with professionally managed listings, a lot that were coming through connectivity partners, channel managers, PMSs, or direct connections. And more we have some of this like casual hosts who do that once in a while. We released recently a feature that helps you sign up your property in less than 15 minutes. So obviously it's not for professionally managed, it's actually for people like you and me who wants to do it once in a while. So we make it easy, and we bring quite a bit of this new features on the platform to serve connectivity partners, very professional with thousands of listings, but on the other end, people who actually do that on a very occasional basis.
Do you list your home on?
I do.
I was about to say Airbnb, but I should say Booking.com, right?
I do it. I do it on both. I'll be honest. So yeah, you can find my listing on both if you search well. So yes, next time you can stay at my place. I have a spare room.
Who gives you the most bookings?
Interestingly, it's a tricky one. So on one side,
I have no doubt. I'm sure he hasn't looked at the numbers at all.
So it depends the time range. If you look at the very short time range, Booking does. If you look at since I started, Airbnb does. Okay. On one side, I'm a super host on Airbnb, so it gives me quite a bit of visibility. And on the other side, Booking is actually quite good at giving bookings. Like there is so much demand coming, especially in a city like Amsterdam, where there is a shortage of supply. You get a lot of bookings. I remember some of my friends who went for dinner a few months ago. They put their listing on, and they got during the night like 6 or 7 bookings. They were pretty surprised, and that's what most of our customers say. Is they get a majority of their booking, for many of them, from Booking.com, because we have a lot of traffic, more than anybody else.
So what do you see on the demand side in terms of those? The different types of inventory. It's quite interesting to see how this market is shifting. So Airbnb, as we discussed quite a bit earlier, kind of moving from that individual homeowner kind of model to kind of the multi-unit and even into hotels. So kind of moving into Booking's area, and kind of Booking kind of going more to Airbnb. But I think you indicated even earlier that it's actually the multi-unit stuff that where you're seeing kind of a higher kind of volume of demand. So why push into that area if the money is with the big stuff?
Well, on the supply side, a lot of our bookings don't come necessarily on a multi-unit property, on a professionally managed property, but it can be a multi-unit, but it can be also somebody who actually manages different apartments in the same market. On the demand side, the thing is, when you put yourself in the shoes of a customer, most of them actually want an accommodation when they go somewhere. Many of them don't even know whether they want an apartment or hotel where they start to do their search. And I remember the survey you did last year, which showed that in the US, for instance, 66% of people rented an apartment or a villa considered a hotel at the same time. And I use the slide all the time, by the way. I presented to the board 2 weeks ago, and that was the first slide I used. And I put Phocuswright at the bottom, not your name, but at least Phocuswright. And the reason for that is because...
Keep doing that, please.
I will. But the reason for that is because it's actually our value proposition. The fact that you have everything on the same platform is what the customers want. And when you have 23 million possibilities on the hotel side and 5 million on the home side, you basically have what the customers want. Having all of that in the same platform, displayed in the same way, is actually very powerful, because for most of the customers, what they want is an accommodation. But to answer your specific question, as soon as somebody has decided they want to get more in a home, at some point, most of them want an apartment. They want a kitchen. Whether it's an apart hotel, a professionally managed apartment, or somebody's home, is sometimes relevant, but sometimes not at all. What they care about is how many rooms, having a kitchen, having a bathroom, but not necessarily much more.
I mean, it is something quite interesting about Booking.com, that the rentals business there has been, I think, somewhat overlooked, and I think Airbnb has captured the imagination, certainly, of the marketplace, and more than its fair share of media attention. But it's interesting with Booking since the outset that it's always been a part of the broader accommodation platform. So it's really the only site at scale where you can see a Marriott, a Hilton, a Hyatt, and Olivier's apartment or home kind of right in that flow. So what have you figured out there? What has Booking learned about how to put that content together from a merchandising perspective, from a UX perspective, that Expedia has struggled with, or that other players have struggled?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we learned, and there have been a lot of discussion in the past few days around, is it better to be a one-stop shop for everything and honing a vertical? We tried both. At some point we had a website that was called villas.com, and guess what? Like the vast majority of the traffic and the bookings we are getting for these villas and apartments were actually on booking.com. So, at some point the discussion was, okay, do we need to have a separate site, even if the URL was actually nice, the domain name of villas.com was great. We shut down that specific website to actually move everything on the booking.com site. To your question, at some point you need to differentiate, be able to see whether it's a hotel, a motel, a home, or whatever. We do that with some, different colors, different tags, different amenities. If you click on a page, it has the same look and feel, but it's not exactly the same page. You see different things for an apartment that you would see on the hotel page, just because the type of information that you need is actually slightly different. In an apartment, you need to know how many rooms you have and how they're set up. In a hotel, except if you have a big suite, like most of the time you have only one room. So talking about the layout of the rooms is not that useful. So, but it's definitely something that we're working on. How can we make this 28 million options discoverable in an easy way? Through filter, through AI, like how do you actually personalize the experience so that when you actually log in for the same date in Amsterdam, we see something different. So last time I booked, for instance, I got an apartment filter automatically in because they knew that I looked at apartments before. Or you would need a swimming pool because I looked for something with a pool with my kids the last time. That's a lot of things that we can do to help the user discover in an easier way all these options that are out there, because obviously otherwise it's an issue, right? Like if you have so many options that it takes you a long time to find out what you want, it can be a little bit daunting. So
do you think Airbnb is making a good move by getting into hotels?
Well, if they believe your studies the way we do, yes, it's a good move. Because if eventually you think that the vast majority of people actually want an accommodation but don't necessarily know up front what they want, having the widest selection possible is actually a good move in my mind, yeah.
So I want to talk a bit about the commercial model on the supply side. There's a very clear difference between how Booking has approached the market and how Airbnb, right? So Booking, very clear, kind of flat commission. I think averaging is 15%. I think right. I did try to sign up, it was 15%. And then but Airbnb has a smaller fee for the host, and then a variable consumer fee or fees on top that are different. So doesn't it put Booking at a disadvantage? So I'm about to list my home and I can see, well, here's a 15% fee, here's a 3% fee. It seems like a pretty obvious decision.
And when you book as a traveler, what do you see on both sides?
Well, I do see, so on the Airbnb side, you would see the customer fee, and
on Booking?
I don't recall seeing a customer fee.
No, there is no customer fee. So
I don't think that was a trick question.
The thing is, we take the party that we want to make it simple for the user. That's why everything is instantly bookable. That's why we don't have user fees. That's why it's easy to actually book on Booking. That's what our name is actually called Booking. So all of that is consistent. Like we put all the fees on the partner to make it as easy as possible for the customer and not having to calculate the fees and all of that. But eventually, the fees are quite the same. Like if you look at 2 apartments on the 2 platforms for €100, it doesn't matter to the customer where are the fees. What they want to know is how much they pay. And on one side, I did the experiment earlier, like when you put your apartment, the customer sees 100 on Booking for my apartment, I get 85. When I put it on Airbnb for €100, I get almost 85 as well. It's actually 84 point something. Let's say it's the same. I make a little bit more money on booking, but still it's the same. So 15% on both sides. You know, it's very similar. It's just the way you display it that is different, and psychologically to a partner it can be slightly different. But we strongly believe that having something that is as clear as possible for the customer is the winning situation.
But will most individual owners on that side, will they really go through? And I would imagine not every host is like Olivier Grémillon, and they will just kind of see it. They'll look at it from their perspective, not even necessarily from the customer perspective. How do you manage that communication, especially as you go into this marketplace?
Yeah, I think psychologically some people would say 15% on one side and 3 to 5% on the other side. One is cheaper. And then, you know, they start to look at it and they see that, you know, basically the fees are the same. It's just they're not on the same part of the customer. And Jeroen said it clearly earlier, we shouldn't compare 3 to 15. It's actually, to do an apple comparison, you need to look at the entire fee structure.
So big push into that kind of that individual, that rental by owner, you know, segment of the market. How big do you think that can be for Booking.com? And are you really prepared to deal with all of the engagement that's required, right, for all of those, you know, all of those individual owners? You know, there's still a lot of individual owners that, you know, they don't want instant booking. They want to be able to kind of go through that process and see who's going to stay in their home, or at least provide themselves some comfort of reading that. I'm sure every profile is absolutely 100% spot on for every single guest, right? But seems like a lot of legwork for. Do you think the return is really there?
Yeah, I think so. It depends. You just don't manage the same way a partner that is like a big chain hotel and somebody like you and me renting your apartment for like 10 days a year. But, you know, we have a chance of having like 8,000 people on the customer service side to service all these partners and guests that we have on the platform. We do a lot of things in the product to actually make sure it's as easy to use as possible. And there is definitely a market for these single property owners, because in many places, that's what is legal. And so if you want to actually have homes and apartments in more and more cities, you need to have people who actually rent their primary residence, because it's more and more what is actually, you know, allowed by the cities. So yeah, there is a market. You need to make sure that you service them more at scale than you would do with, you know, having somebody do visits with you every single month or something like we do with some of our hotel partners, for instance. But there is definitely a model and a business model on there. Yeah. Your CEO, Glenn Fogel, and also Darren Houston before him, had made kind of comments that, you know, they were more than happy to kind of let Airbnb kind of break the new ground, so to speak, from a regulatory, you know, standpoint, and kind of deal with all of that. It's hardly a settled issue. So what is Booking's approach? Are you going to start to? I mean, you're getting into these waters, right? So when they're going to get muddy at some point. Yeah, I remember Darren saying that at Phocuswright the first time I went there in Dublin. So our position is actually very simple, because we just say, hey, we're looking at the regulation. When there is a regulation saying we should do X, Y, Z, we're actually just going to do it. It makes my life very easy, right? So in some places we need to make sure that somebody has a registration number, and we have to remove the ones that are not registered. That's what we do. In other places we don't, so we don't. So that's actually very easy. We look at the regulation in all the places, we follow the regulation, and then, you know, we go back to business.
We have a question from the floor, Douglas.
Hi, Olivier. I just want to bounce back on what you said earlier about having your own apartment listed on both Airbnb and Booking.com, and just to ask you if you can give us a number or maybe a percentage of how many units you have listed that are also common to Airbnb.
I'm not sure.
What's the overlap of listings between Airbnb and Booking.com?
So I don't know the answer to this question. I think Jeroen earlier said that 72% of units on Airbnb were exclusive. So I guess a lot of the others are not exclusive, and I guess most of them should be on Booking or HomeAway. So it gives you a sense. I don't know these numbers, but I think more and more, to Douglas' point earlier, you see that we started on the hotel side, then we went into the professionally managed apartments, and we are getting into, and we've been getting into the single property owners. And on the other side, Airbnb went the other way. So more and more there will be some overlap between the two. What is the exact number? I think Johan gave you one earlier.
Good afternoon, Linda Lane from Lecotaustic in Paris. In order to accelerate on the rental market, are you considering making acquisitions exactly as Accor Hotel did it with Square Break, One Fund Stay?
So we are looking at acquisitions in many different places in the company. We just acquired a company on the attraction and experiences side called Fair Harbor a couple of weeks ago. On the home side specifically, I'm looking at a lot of different things. Some of them can be a technology solution on one side because it will make our business better and go faster in one specific area. But nothing specific at this stage, or not necessarily another player in our space. I think we have a great technology. The goal is to get more supply, and there are other ways to actually get more supply than just acquiring somebody else.
What do you think of hotels getting into the rental market? We've seen, of course, Hyatt's been in, Accor's done several things, acquired One Fine Stay. Marriott now has got a deal with Hostmaker, and they've got some units in London. What's your take on all of that? Is that worrisome for Booking.com? And
no, not necessarily. And you know, if their units are on Booking.com, we are more than happy to get them. And we have One Fine Stay units that belong to Accor and all of that. So you know, we are a distribution platform in the end for all of that stuff. So it's actually fine. The interesting piece is the fact that it legitimized a little bit that business. Obviously, a lot of the hotels were talking about that sector in a certain way in the past. The fact that they're actually getting into that themselves means that they recognize that there is it's a customer. The customer want that, and so they want to have a place at the party, I would say.
We have another question from the floor.
Hi, Olivier. Rom Handler from Innovel, Tel Aviv. I was wondering, going back to the multiple listing of individual on different sites, as a latecomer into this home listing market, and TripAdvisor is there, HomeAway, obviously, VRBO, Airbnb. I've noticed that there are already technologies that sync the calendars, but when it gets to rates, it's much more complicated. And as mentioned earlier today, most people not very skilled in revenue management. Are you guys, as a latecomer to the game, looking to develop technologies and tools for the users to actually be able to share this stuff, so it will be easier for them to be on multiple platforms, or you are thinking there is a market out there that is not tapped at all?
Yeah, the answer is a little bit of both. We don't have to build everything ourselves. It seems that in some cases, a lot of these tools are not necessarily as good as they could be yet. So if some partners want to develop these tools and make them world-class so that it can actually serve the syncing, both on the calendar side, the pricing and everything, that's fine. We don't have necessarily a religion about it. If we need to build it ourselves, we will as well. But that's definitely something where the industry needs to get better. And we are exploring both routes at this stage. And most likely we'll have a mixed approach on owning our having our own tool to make sure the connection works as well as possible, and on the other side, having some preferred partners who do a good job out there. It's not the case for all of them, so if we could actually select the ones that are actually great and recommend that to our home partners, I think everybody would benefit from it.
Okay, so I'd like to wrap up the interview. I do this sometimes, like to play a little game, just to mix things up a bit. So this game is called Either Or.
Okay.
So I'll just say a couple of words, like vanilla or chocolate, and you would say.
And do I have to explain why? Not necessarily.
No, it's just
okay.
Unless you might be prompted.
Okay.
Okay. We'll start easy. So you're French, right? So you're from Paris?
Yes.
Okay. So let's be easy. So Paris or Amsterdam?
Amsterdam for now.
Wine or beer?
Wine.
Gouda or Camembert?
Camembert.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Facebook or Google?
Richard was right before me, so it's actually tricky. I'm going to say, how much money are we giving? Who are we giving more money to? I'm going to say Google.
One word answer is
Google.
Fine. Google. Okay. Hey Alexa or Hey Google?
Hey Alexa.
Voice or chat?
Chat.
Instagram or Snapchat?
Instagram.
Amazon or Alibaba?
Alibaba.
China or India?
China.
Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Bitcoin.
Uber or BlaBlaCar?
BlaBlaCar.
Airbnb or Expedia?
Airbnb. That was a tricky one.
Flights or rental cars?
Rental cars.
Huh, okay. That's interesting. Attractions or experiences?
Attractions.
Homes or hotels?
Homes.
Boats or castles?
Boats.
Igloos or yurts?
Yurts.
Regulation or housing crisis?
Regulation.
Okay. Commission or customer fee?
Commission.
4 million or 5 million?
Doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally. One more. 3% or 15%?
15%.
Okay, all right. 100% of Olivier Grémillon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Douglas.